bold of you to start your first base in Kenshi, but boldness is what it'll take to go ahead and survive in this wasteland. So let's show you how to actually build a base here in the beautiful world of Kenshi. Let's get started. Sorry about that horrible accent, but either way, welcome back everybody. Today we're playing some nice, lovely Kenshi here, and instead of going back on our previous character here, we started off on a brand new, fresh character here to go ahead and try to tell you how to start up a brand new base within Kenshi, because honestly, there's a lot of preparatory work you really have to go in initially when starting a base to go ahead and actually make it successful. So let's go ahead, go over that preparatory work here, and just kind of start, laying out the groundwork to go ahead and build a base. So before you can really start off making a base here, you really need to start off actually making some research and getting some supplies, mostly building recruits and some food to go ahead and make a base. Now to actually go ahead and actually make all that stuff here, you're realistically going to need to make some cats. And there are a few ways to go ahead and make some cats. So ideally, the first way that you can really do that is basically a surefire way to go ahead and get started is to start off here in a town called the Hub, or anywhere similarly friendly to you. Go ahead and start mining up a bunch of resources here. Now, realistically, the easiest way to go ahead and do this is to find some iron nodes over here, like this one you can see in the bottom left corner here. That you can tell it is iron resource just based off the way it looks with this nice mixture of brown and iron, grayish coloration. Or you can go ahead and left click it when you have this right hand pick mark on it, and it'll actually give you a couple of stats about it in terms of quality, so how rich it is, how much will you get per unit of work, the amount of workers that can be maximally deployed on this node, the efficiency depending on how many workers you have, as well as just the amount of iron available. You can also go ahead and mine some copper here, which is generally worth more in terms of, amount of cats per unit of time, but is generally less plentiful than iron. However, if you don't know where any sort of these resources are, there actually is an easy way to go ahead and figure out where all these resources are by using the prospect tool in the bottom right corner. So have a character selected that's usually outside. So in our case, it is our nice, lovely little Captain Buggle here. We'll go ahead and press the prospect button here, and it'll give us some stats about the zone we're in. So technically we're in the border zone, altitude, prospect skill, all this jazz here. But the most important thing for us is going to be the iron and copper initially. So you can see, for us, we can sense this prospect here is showing us this iron node right here, which is kind of obvious, very easy. But it also shows this one over here, which you can go ahead and left click and find out that yes, it is indeed, in fact, a iron resource here, but of lesser quality. And there's also one all the way over here that you can also go ahead and use, fairly high quality resource as well. Or ideally copper for its nice profitability here, so you can get ourselves this nice lovely small resource here they can actually have 2 people deployed on, so a fairly actually profitable copper resource. Now, one thing to know about this prospecting is it's very limited in range and primarily depends on where your character is actually sitting. So if you want to prospect a area much farther away to see, for example, this copper node in the distance, you're going to need to go ahead and walk your tush over there, prospect again, and it'll show you, or you can just, use your eyes. But that's one way to go ahead and start mining up a bunch of money here. Ideally, before you go ahead and do this, make sure you have your medic set on here, because it'll be very important to have your characters heal themselves up when they get injured. You don't want a character here to accidentally bleed to death because they didn't really actually take a look and take care of themselves. But to go ahead and get your character automatically mining, go ahead, find the resource, find that little pickaxe icon here, and shift right click, and that'll go ahead and automatically assign it to the queue. So as soon as you have jobs available, the character will go ahead and start mining. And the more this character mines here, the more the progress bar fills up here on the copper resource output section, and you can access it just by left clicking the resource that you have the pickaxe icon over, and that'll go ahead and showcase this nice lovely copper resource. That's one way you can go ahead and earn money. Another way to actually go ahead and earn money here that our character here will find out very soon is that you can actually go ahead and start fights with bandits and animals here. And animals themselves are quite nice because they're not a part of a faction, so it won't anger anybody. Sure, they're technically a part of the herbivore faction, but it's very difficult to actually get into war with that, faction, quote-unquote. But if you go ahead and drag them into the base, the guards of usually any base you're in, if it's the Lone Shack, it's the Hub, or if it's Squin, they'll go ahead and attack the herbivores, and you can go ahead and loot them, and usually they're not going to be looted by the guards themselves. In fact, we have some right in the town, so this makes it exceptionally easy to go ahead and cheese out the AI for some free loot here. Now, to go ahead and do this, they're not going to naturally be hostile, so what you're going to have to do here is that you're going to have to hold and right click on them and go ahead and attack unprovoked, and that'll go ahead and make them chase after you. Now, since our character is a bit slow, I'm going to go ahead and preemptively walk over here near the guards. Go ahead, attack unprovoked to trigger the animals to fight us. You can see the guards are starting to run down to the base here. And so now I am going to go hide inside this. I'm also going to turn on hold and passive here in the right section here to prevent our character from going ahead and engaging the hostile enemies again. Realistically, once the guards start fighting them, we don't want to go ahead and start ourselves. You can see now the guards are going ahead and attacking these nice lovely little Garu. Fantastic work here. The nice thing about animals of this size is that they have a lot of meat and a lot of leather that you can either go ahead and cook, or that you can just go ahead and straight up sell for a huge sum of profit here. And you can see that a few of them have already started to come unconscious. Go ahead and loot them while they're unconscious, because that'll instantaneously kill them. Now it was unconscious, now it is dead. So very easy way to go ahead and make some early money to start just baiting in herbivores. And this can be used to purchase a lot of things. Primarily what we're interested in at the early stage here is going to be books, iron plates, and building materials, as those are the materials necessarily for a base. Also, if you're a wanderer, you're also probably going to need to get things like bandages here, just so that you can continue to run and walk virtually unimpeded. Or if you also need some snacks as well. So bread and dried meat, fantastic little food here. But you can see now we're up to 2,844 cats just from these few Garu themselves, and we haven't even made any of the meat products yet here. So a fantastic early start here to go ahead and get yourself some early resources. And same thing can be done with bandits as well. You know, auto attack them, go ahead and drag them into the base, and guards will usually fight them. All you have to make sure that they're usually bandits that the faction already hates. So starving bandits, hungry bandits, the dust bandits, usually those type of people are going to be the ones to be automatically hated by most guards. So go ahead, drag them into the base, and beat them up, and congratulations, you get yourself a bunch of money. Ideally, to help speed up this grinding process, you're going to generally need to get, recruits to go ahead, bring into your party, and go ahead and start expanding the amount of people who can go ahead and mine for you. Now, you can go ahead and actually go to most major bars, and you'll find recruits in there. You can usually find them just based off if they're a drifter status, or in the case that's easier and more identifiable, it's going to have this double bubble icon on here. I'm never going to explain the recruiting process in depth because I have a whole video about that process that you can go ahead and find on my channel. So I'll go ahead and link that down below if you want to go ahead and look it for yourself. But that's generally going to how you're going to be interacting with recruits. Another thing you can also do to help with a little bit of extra income is that with all these extra animals here, you get a bunch of extra animal meat here, which can be turned into a little bit of a higher price item called dry meat through the use of campfires. So if you go ahead, take the meat into your inventory, go ahead and press the B icon, or B button, you go ahead and find the camping section here in the left corner. Now you can go ahead and take a look at the campfire here, and it is this nice lovely little thing right here. Now downside is you really can't put it inside any town unless you own one of the buildings, but even when that's the case, you can actually go ahead and just slap it down into the building, and boom, and now it actually works fairly easily. Now, with this nice little campfire here, you can go ahead and actually have your character auto-haul into the campfire itself, and they'll go ahead and turn this meat into nice, lovely dried meat, slowly over time. And with a lot of animals here, I'd recommend actually doing this with quite a few campfires. So, you can go ahead and place down as many as you absolutely want to, and they're really easy to disassemble too, because if you want to go ahead and disassemble them, you just go ahead, right click them and click dismantled, or you can just left click them, and there's an option to go ahead and immediately dismantle it. Since it costs you 0 resources, it's no issue whatsoever. So let's go ahead and cook up some dried meat. And you can actually see it's worth a little bit more money here. As you can see, one piece of dried meat has a value of 99 cats, while a piece of regular raw meat only sells for 71. So you gain a little bit of extra money just by going through that 1/2 second process of cooking it. So another thing to consider is that when you're actually starting to get this base started up here, you're going to need a decent amount of supplies, including building materials, iron plates, and a little bit of books to do some research. And it's going to take up a lot of inventory space, so realistically, get some supplies from your local backpack merchant here, and it'll help you out here a little bit. Plus, they also contain things like splints too, which is pretty important if you need to bandage yourself up in the middle of combat, or robotic repair kits if the case that you actually have a robot on your side, so very useful to have one. I'd recommend just going for a wooden backpack right now, because it's actually fairly easy to use it, and the combat penalties of it can actually be fairly easily remediated just by taking your backpack off and throwing everything onto the floor, since you can pretty much do that instantaneously. So there's not really that much downside to having a wooden backpack, other than you just need to do a little bit more micromanaging. And with that, now we actually have a little extra space here, which is really nice, because because I can do things like stack in food items or books or iron plates here, and it makes it much easier to travel around with a large amount of supplies. So now I can take, say, a few more books here, and it doesn't really cause much of an issue. And since we also have a robotic character here as well, I'd recommend to go ahead and just go ahead and purchase a repair kit for them as well, so they can be nice and repaired. And by base, I mean research outpost. But we're going to need a few level W building materials to go ahead and repair one of the buildings inside the major hub to actually get started with that. So I'll meet you back there. So realistically, you don't actually need a very large base to go ahead and start doing a lot of research here. So realistically, I'd recommend just starting off with a nice little small shack here. You can see that in the bottom left corner, it's only listed for a sale of roughly around 1,500 cats. And the less important thing too is that it doesn't require a whole lot of building materials to go ahead and get started. So it actually makes it considerably more cheaper than trying to do something like an old storm house or a bug house here or snail houses that are considerably more expensive and require a lot more building materials to get started up. Although theoretically you can actually make a fairly sizable outpost here and to actually get a lot of things done. But for our purposes, we're just going to go ahead and stick with a small shack. So easiest thing to do, go ahead and purchase it. And now we have the option here to go ahead and repair it. And to actually repair it, you go ahead, right click, hold down, and now it gives you the option to repair. Now you will need an engineer with building materials. So our character has a decent amount of building materials here. We need approximately another 3, you can see in the bottom left corner here. So we just go ahead and have our character right click to it, or you can shift right click it and assign him to be an engineer if you'd like to. Although I believe this character has a reduced capacity for engineering. Yep, that's right. So why don't we go ahead and have our yield level W lead come on down here and do the engineering, since he's a bit more of a idealized candidate. Now our character is just going to go ahead and assemble this. Alright, now we got ourselves a nice level W shack here. We're going to just go ahead and turn this off to public, making it private just so that no one wanders in accidentally. And we also have ourselves a few more building materials left over to go ahead and build something. So realistically, we're going to need to start off doing here at the outpost is making yourself a small little research bench here. Only costs 3 building materials, so fairly easy to go ahead and maneuver. We're going ahead and use the arrow keys here to help maneuver this around, or rather the period keys, period and comma. And usually I just slap it into the corner here because that is usually the easiest place, and you want to make the most efficient use of the space possible. Easiest way to do it is actually just to clearly use one wall to figure out what distances you need from that section, and then move it towards the other wall, and then usually get a pretty good corner spot, like so. And we'll go ahead and leaf and build that. Now that you have the research bench here, you can go ahead and left click it to open up its inventory, and you can also open up your character's inventory, and just right click, and that'll go ahead and shift over a lot of the books into the research bench. And the reason why you need to do that is that a lot of the items you need to go ahead and research require the use of books in order to actually fully utilize it. But there's a lot of things here that you can train or research initially that will help with any sort of base building adventure. But realistically, there's only a few things that you're going to need here. So you're going to need to get some iron plates here, which just allows you to go ahead and make a manual iron refinery, which is really important if you want to do any other sort of building larger buildings or boxes or weapons or armor. So you're really basically going to need this as a mandatory item. You inherently start off with the ability to go ahead and make a stone mine and a stone processor in your own facility. However, these are all both outdoor activities, so really can't be done inside a base like this. You have to create your own base in order to actually properly utilize a stone mine and stone refinery. So realistically, the main research you're going to need is that iron plate refinery. Beyond that though, there are a few other things that I'd recommend getting as well. Realistically, getting all of tier 1 technology here, which includes everything you get in the small research bench, is going to be absolutely fabulous in terms of what you're actually going to need here. Now, in terms of farming, you really only need to tailor this towards the area they're actually going to be living in. So, for example, since I'm in a desert region here, as evidenced by the fact that it is, well, a desert, realistically, the only farming items I'm going to need here are wheat straw and cactus. I could do a little bit of cotton, but it's not really necessary for me. And rice food is more necessary for a wetland area. However, in some areas, you don't really even need to start off with that because you start off with the vegetable farm. However, the vegetable farms can only really work in green environments, such as what you'd find over here in the Aquanite territory. But since we're skeletons and hive people here, really can't do that. And technology tree too, you can also see what you need for it. So some of them, for like example, this cactus farming, not only do I need books here, as evident in the bottom section, I also need cactuses as well. and a previous research in wheat straw farming. So just be aware that sometimes you will have to purchase other items and put it into the inventory of the research bench to actually go ahead and research these other items. Another thing that's a really good quality of life feature is storage boxes as well. Having the actual storage boxes for ore, food, and farming materials is really nice because you can go ahead and shift right click, and that'll go ahead and automatically assign a colonist to go ahead and haul whatever item is associated with that box to it. So say you have someone mining a copper resource and they have them auto haul to a copper box or copper storage device, it'll go ahead, take the copper from that resource and plop it into the box, and you won't have to mess around with that at all. So it just reduces the amount of micromanaging you have to do. Also, for defense purposes, having makeshift walls with the makeshift gate here is going to be really important because it allows you to concentrate all the people who are coming into your base through one gate, which if you set up things like harpoon turrets or people with crossbows at the top of the walls, it can actually be very beneficial to go ahead and deal with a lot of these bandits. And then for some good money making, getting the smithing done here is going to be very beneficial, just because making basic weapons, basic headgear not only armors yourself, and then allows you to go ahead and sell that extra resource there for a little bit of cash without having to carry around just absolutely hunks of iron. Plus, once you get into the later game here, having a well-leveled smith here, as evident by the smithing stats here, will allow you to go ahead and make yourself very powerful weapons that can rival even the Maitus. And then some training as well, because training, you necessarily, when you're dealing with newer recruits, are not going to have very good combat stats here, so having any sort of training here is going to be very beneficial. Of course, you'll get more once you reach tech level 2, but you have to have, the previous research in small houses before you can even begin that. So now I'm just going to do a little bit of research here, gain some more recruits, gain some more cats, and I'll come back to you once we have all that done, because it will take a little bit of time. And as a quick note too, a lot of these things don't actually require a whole lot of books. Like a lot of these storage devices here don't really need any books whatsoever. So go ahead, research those. Those can be beneficial, especially public sales. If you have a publicly facing base, it actually is a nice way to go ahead and sell a lot of your crafting materials without too much of an issue. However, I would make sure to consult the wiki on what items can actually be sold, because there actually is a fairly limited amount of items that can be sold within Kenshi. That is, unless you have mods. Another thing I'd recommend doing to go ahead and speed up research is that you can see it's nighttime now, and with nighttime, you actually get a penalty to the amount of science or any sort of skill you can do, similar to laboring. So to make our scientist here able to research at an optimal pace, we'll go ahead and add in a small little light here. Most towns come with a little bit of a light source, so it's really no big of an issue. I'd recommend just slapping one in the center of the base, slap in the middle of the town, and you'll be alright. Your character will go ahead and automatically create it if it's assigned to engineer, and they have an iron plate around. You can see now our character now has no longer the in darkness penalty when it comes to his science, allowing him to continue at an absolute optimal brisk pace. Now that we have our ore storage researched here, we can go ahead and slap down a couple of ore boxes here. I recommend, since we're doing a lot of copper, we'll go ahead and slap down a box, just allowing us to go ahead and store our copper away. Realistically, you're only going to need one iron plate for this, so I'll have to purchase one, but that's no biggie. It'll helpfully automate this process a lot more. And we'll go ahead and slap one down here that will allow us to go ahead and store regular ore as well, which is, in this case, is from iron. And now you can see that even in this case where we don't even have Ruka assigned to go ahead and automatically all to the box, just because the machine was full, she's automatically going ahead and doing that. We don't even have to assign her. But it's just another fail-safe to do, just in case there's some other weird miscellaneous thing that happens. But you don't have to do it, but it is a nice thing. And the fact that you have it automatically here means now you no longer have to manually empty out the refinery every 2 seconds, allowing them to keep optimally mining for many hours more, my servants. Ah, yes. Baiting the goats in to attack the Flotsam Ninja again. Getting ourselves here just a wee bit more resources. Even me. Another nice little addition to have here is the food storage box here, which just allows you to store things like cooked meats or sandwiches, chew sticks, realistically any food that your characters could need throughout the day. They'll go ahead, automatically eat here, and maybe deposit any extra food they have, just so they don't have to carry around a large supply of food on them, or they can go ahead and automatically feed themselves without having to micromanage it. So great addition to have in your base. Same thing before, left click it to open up the inventory, and just go ahead and right click all the meat you want in there. So now any character like a Hiver or a Sheki will go ahead and try to get some food. In this case, very slowly. Man, it looks really weird when you have your character automatically hauling to a campfire and automatically hauling to a food storage. It does not look natural at all. Hey, at least it's slowly filling up the food storage here. So another thing when it comes to farming and you need to get your base initially set up too, I'd recommend also having at least 10 of wheat straw and 10 of cactus on you, and maybe 10 of hemp as well, to get not only your clothing upstarted, but then your food program as well. Now, initially, you won't be able to use a lot of this food. While you could just immediately start eating it, I'd recommend just reusing that into expanding the size of the farm later on down the line. But that's for further time. Let's go ahead and buy ourselves some lovely, lovely wheat. So as you can see, I've pretty much finished up most of the tier 1 technology here. So we realistically don't need this actual research bench anymore, and we can go ahead and reclaim a lot of the materials from it. Easiest way to go ahead and do that is empty it out and click dismantle in the bottom left. That'll go ahead and refund you 2 building materials here. And with that, we just realistically need to get some supplies to go ahead and start our base. Alright, so now that we got some supplies here, let's go over what we have. So we have a decent amount of iron plates here and a little bit of building materials here, just to get started with the absolute basics. Because theoretically, you actually only need a very limited amount of supplies to go ahead and already infinitely generate your base. So at the absolute barest of minimum, you're going to need 3 building materials here, just so they can build your level 1 stone mine, and then you're going to need 6 iron plates to make an iron plate refinery, because an iron node can't really be created, it can only be found, so you don't have to worry about actually generating that. So once you actually get the iron plate refinery going, you have someone mining iron, then you can generate an infinite supply of iron plates, which then you can use to make a stone refinery, or you can just take another 6 iron plates and make a manual stone refinery yourself, so that can allow you to make the building materials. And then the building materials can make things like the homes and basically all the walls are really, which are the main things you're going to be needing with that. And the iron plates will allow you to make most of your storage chests and some of your more advanced stations. So once you have that absolute basic materials, then you have to deal with food supply. Now, generally, you're going to need to start off with a minimum of either 10 cactuses, 10 wheat straw, or 10 of whatever vegetable or rice wheat if you're in a swamp. So those will take care of your food needs. And 10 is the absolute bare minimum, because that's what you can use to create a small farm. After generating a few cycles of crops, then you just re-roll that into making it into a medium size, to then a large farm, and then an extra large farm, and then you can just generate more farms from there, and that'll allow you to make a fairly sizable amount of food. And then beyond that, having some cotton or hemp, just so that you can do some basic fabric weaving, that allows you to make some armor, to make beds, to make really anything that you could do to actually put inside your body. That is very important to have, especially considering that beds are vitally important for any fleshy character that needs to heal over time, because you will need that. And generally, getting beds early on is a little bit harder, so I recommend is picking up a couple of your sleeping bags from the map vendor slash really just kind of like adventurer outpost that usually sells backpacks, repair kits, maps, healing things. They also tend to sell sleeping bags here, which you can actually build inside the camping section here that allow you to go ahead and throw down a camping bed, usually inside your, well, own facilities, obviously. But that will allow your character to go ahead and heal a little bit faster, which is really important. Ruka being rude, we're in the middle of something. Now that we have these absolute basic supplies, what we're realistically going to need next is to find a good place to build a base. And there are a lot of reasons or a lot of factors to actually choose a base. So let's go ahead and I'll pick out an ideal spot and I'll show you why it's ideal in a second. Alright, so we're still over here in the nice, lovely, lovely border zone here, right next to the check people and the hub. The reason why this is a fairly easy zone and a nice zone to start a base off is that it has realistically a lot of the good options here. So first off, a decent amount of availability of water here, so this is primarily what you're going to be using to feed things like crops. So having a little bit of water here is absolutely vital if you want to do any sort of food production or clothing production. Beyond that, fertility here is 100%, so when it comes to actually growing crops here, it'll be very efficient and it won't take a whole lot of time here. So you won't have to waste a lot of time, grinding as many crops out, getting as much wheat, getting as much fabric. It'll actually be much simpler here. Plus, on top of that, with a higher fertility, it means you need less farms to go ahead and actually get a sufficient amount of food to feed a colony, so it is quite nice. Beyond that, we have a decent amount of availability of stone here. These bright green areas basically mean 100% stone, so if you were to slap down a nice, lovely mine of some sort, you can see that we get basically 100%, which is really nice. Super easy to go ahead and get started off. Beyond that, there is a few little iron nodes. Primarily, there's one right here, which is very beneficial. You also have one somewhere around here that actually I have prospected again. It is hard for me to see sometimes. So a nice, lovely iron chunk here with a 100% iron quality with 3 workers. So right there alone will give you primarily most of what you need for iron. As well as there also being a copper node right next door allowing you to get a decent amount of copper, with a bit more down the line if you need any sort of extra resources here, with 2 copper nodes right here as well. So that should primarily feed most of your needs. Realistically, once you start getting into high efficiency workers, you really actually don't need that much iron and copper to get most of your stuff done. It's really only realistically early on when you need a lot of iron and you need a lot of stone. Plus, on top of that, you're also near major settlements, so if you need places to trade, get any supplies, you're really going to be in an easy time. Another thing you can continue or consider when it comes to zones like this is that when it comes to animal populations here, the primary things around here are going to be Garbu and goats, as you've seen probably throughout this video, me killing them, a bunch of them at the hub, skinning them and taking all their meat and doing a bunch of stuff here. However, if you were to build a base, say, over here in Hiver territory, there is a lot of gorillas and beak things, which are extremely dangerous early on, and will basically guaranteed wipe your colony if you try to build out there initially. However, one benefit is that there's no taxes. So depending on where you actually build, there is some level of taxes. So when it comes to the Holy Nation, realistically, easy enough, you just gotta pray. However, pretty much early, you gotta be human and you can't have any robotic limbs. Up here in the United States territory, you actually have to play just straight up taxes like cats. So that's one thing to consider down as well. But it's generally a little bit easier to start off, and there's plenty of settlements and plenty of recruiting potential. So there is going to be some level of taxes. There's also going to be some taxes down here, because this is also United States territory. And there also is some other forms of taxes in some other areas where bandits may come to extort you. I know there's a few options. I haven't experienced all of them, so I can't say as to where and how often that happens, or a lot of things like that. But I've also built bases out in these neck of the woods, in swamps, or in the Shem area. And the thing is, considering that once you start getting into the more of these wilderness areas down in these part of the territory, while there is no taxes, there is extremely high level enemies here, either from animals or from bandits, that'll generally try to kill you. Or if you come over here to the Leviathan Coast in the top portion, very strong animals, but a lot of great chance to get meat and leather. Or if you come over here to the Cannibal Plains, well, there's, well, cannibals, so, hopefully you're a robot. Or if you come over to the Shrieking Coast, there's a bunch of Shriekers, lots of them, so it can be dangerous just by a pure numbers game. Or in Mongrel, where you have all of these lost hivers here trying to eat your limbs. So there's a lot of territories that you can settle with very minimal taxes, but there's a lot more danger associated with it, and you need to be a lot stronger if you're going to even attempt something like that. Now, in terms of basics to how you should set up or lay your base, I'd recommend just keeping it nice and condensed for the early part, just so there isn't a whole lot of travel. Travel will slow down your efficiency, make everything take a lot longer. So ideally, keep a stone mine near 100% efficiency if you can. Try to adjust the height or shift it around if you want to try to get an ideal location. So right here apparently is a great location for a stone mine. We'll go ahead and start with a stone mine 1, just because that's what we have enough building materials for. So yeah. Next, we're going to need to get a stone processor, but before we can do that, we really need to get our iron refinery set up here. So since this requires iron to work, we're going to head and keep it near our iron resource. Same thing when it comes to this. When this becomes full, it'll store it in here, or when these people are run out of resources to go ahead and use, they'll pull it from the nearest iron source, either from a chest or from the actual node itself. So you don't have to worry about too much manual configuration to get storage working here. And you generally want to keep these things relatively close together. For one, just kind of give you an idea of having a manufacturing sector in one location, and then say over here would be like housing or farming or something like that. So having these nice and segmented off here just makes it easy for one to find stuff when you never have to give a task out again, or two, just keep things nice and clean and streamlined overall. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and just start building. Now, since we don't really have a house, wall, or gates right now, keeping your food out in an open food barrel is a bit of a risk due to the fact that there's probably going to be bandits coming by here, and they may snatch all your food out of your fuel barrel, die, get eaten by a dog, and boom, all your food is gone. So keep it on yourselves right now until you get a solid gate and house foundation to go ahead and get started. While it may not look as clean or classy to have items and whatnot left on the floor, your engineer will actually pick it up and use it if it's within a reasonable amount of distance. So if you throw iron plates or hemp or realistically anything onto the floor, they will still use it fairly easily. So now you can see it's all over the floor, and we'll go ahead and assign someone to go ahead and create a little farm. So while we may not have enough materials right now to go ahead and create a large-scale farm, let's just go ahead and kind of highlight where to put it. So we just got to find a good place that has a decent amount of fertility. You can see basically the entire zone is fertile. We'll go ahead then and just place it where it's really ideal. and we have a fairly wide margin in which we can build our buildings. Generally, we kind of want to have farming and whatnot all to be at least somewhat centrally located, just so there isn't like a huge distance traveled between every location. So we'll just go ahead and set up shop close by. You can see, since we chose cactuses, and this is an arid environment, we get 100% fertility and 100% crop yield here. So we'll be getting a lot of material from this relatively quickly. And since it's a small farm too, we don't need terribly many cactuses, only needing approximately 10. Since we'll also be having wheat too, I'll go ahead and set up an adjacent farm right next door. Doesn't have nearly as good of a crop yield due to not being in its idealized environment, but wheat will still work fairly well in an arid environment. Now, unfortunately, since we're in an arid environment, cotton is not really the king here. Most likely, you're going to want to have hemp. However, since we're not at tech level 2 yet, we can't research the hemp-based fabrics, so we're going to have to just stick with cotton for now. And you can see that even it's on the ground, you can go ahead, pick it up, and start slapping it in there. Beyond that, we're also going to need some place to go ahead and house our civilians, as well as just provide them some shelter from the storm, and maybe for some advanced component manufacturing later on. So a storm house, absolutely excellent first tier house, and we'll just go ahead and kind of align it with the road here and with the farm, just in case they want to do some quick baking over here or cooking of whatever they need. And again, you don't want to make this base too sprawling, because otherwise it becomes kind of a pain to really manage later on down the line. Plus, it's a lot of movement. But you can still centrally located near all the resource nodes, so depending on whatever put in there for crafting wise, it'll be ideal. And we're just starting off with a storm house, because realistically, I can actually use storm houses pretty much until the end game, because you can fit a lot within these bad boys. You can fit multiple product stations within there super easily. Another thing is that your base will need power for things like light fixtures, active harpoon turrets, and some of the advanced crafting stations on down the line. And ideally, lights, getting those early on, will help your efficiency at nighttime, so it's definitely a huge benefit to have it. Downside, you will need iron plates and copper. However, copper can just be attained from the node itself, and iron plates, we already have a manual refinery for that, so that'll be excellent here to go ahead and get our efficiency up. Ideally, I would just stick with wind generation early on, because we're in an arid place. Wind is pretty frequent here, so you don't have to worry about it. Plus, once you start getting batteries, then the whole issue of it being offline for a little bit of time can be completely negated. Now, if you have a lot of extra fuel, you can go ahead and start using a small generator. It definitely takes up a lot less space. However, we'll just go ahead and go with a wind generator for right now. And realistically, these don't get attacked very often, so you can place them in very far off locations that, as long as they're within approximate close spacing of your base, it's good enough. I'm not sure why the Holy Nation is coming to Shek territory to come and help me pray, but I think that might be a glitch. They should not be coming down here at all. So another thing to consider when it comes to actually setting up your first initial base is that you will get attacked quite frequently, either by roaming bandits, roaming animals, or just some type of faction raid. They are quite common when you're first starting up your base. So to realistically get through your first couple of weeks as a solo base, I'd recommend hiring some guards. So at the hub, there's generally going to be an actual mercenary group here you can go ahead and hire. All of them fairly high stats. So talk to the captain here. You can go ahead and actually, ideally, instead of hiring bodyguards, because bodyguards can roam around with you, but they're also a lot more expensive. However, outposts are generally a lot cheaper. So it's 1,000 cats per day to guard an outpost. However, to do bodyguards, it's 2,000 cats a day. So you can get a lot more days just by guarding an outpost. And since we have 8,000 cats here, we'll go ahead and hire them for approximately 8 days here, so that we don't have to worry about rehiring them at all. And of course, I have someone try to steal my money immediately upon leaving the hub. The safest place known to man. Just the life of an independent base, getting attacked by a swarm of at least 20 bandits on day 2? Wow, I'm having a great time. But this is one of the things that's going to be common with these bandit bases. So that's why having a mercenary guard for the first couple of days is extremely important if you want to be able to survive long term. Walls and having extra defenses around here, harpoon turrets will make this more easy as time goes on. And if you're finding that you're having a little bit too many bandits or a little bit too many animal raids, you can always go to other towns and find other mercenary parties to hire into your base. Because you can have multiple within the same base. You don't have to have only just one. Now you can see that 2 of our colonists here are actually knocked out. This is where the camping beds come in to help, because they have a 4 times healing rate, while a traditional bed has approximately an 8 times healing rate. So for any of your fleshier healing need units, having these little extra sleeping bags here is going to help out a lot. Ideally, you would have this inside the base, but if you don't, having it on the outside works just fine too. And if you have your colonists already set to rescue, which you can easily do by just right-clicking and shift-clicking rescue, it'll go ahead and just slap them onto the bed until they're nice and fully healed. And if you actually left-click on it, you can see the healing bonus down here in the bottom left that says ×4. Another thing you can do is that if your colonists get a little bit too injured and need to get out of the fight, go ahead, go to a major settlement, go to an inn, and just put them into a bed at the inn. That'll go ahead and heal them at times 8 the rate, plus give them some guards to go ahead and keep them nice and healed up. Yep, so apparently we did get a prayer day, and dust bandits too, assaulting the base right after. I am not quite sure what is bringing on this level of hostility here, but there is an insane amount of NPCs entering this base today. I do not know what's going on. Once you start getting your base along a bit more, having some storage for the iron and the copper will be kind of nice just to know where you stand in terms of overall resource allocation, as well as just to give a nice little place to offload just in case the refineries are offline or they're not being used at the moment. So having them close by as well will definitely help with efficiency, so copper next to copper and ore next to iron ore. Ideally, I like to keep the iron plates and other main materials beyond the refineries just to give a visual aid as to where along in the process I am. So I like to keep them right behind the iron refinery here for iron plates, and for nice level W building materials, keeping them right behind the building material refinery station. So next we're going to go ahead and start off with the walls here, because walls are really going to be the foundation for a lot of your security here. It's going to be where you're going to do a lot of your defensing options here, as well as it's really going to be where you're going to be mounting a lot of your crossbowmen, your actual mounted crossbows, mounted harpoons, and advanced mounted harpoons later on down the line here. So let's go overhead the basics with the wall here. Now, I have researched into technology level 2 here, so I do have defensive walls level 2, which have slightly different building considerations than the makeshift walls. But for the most part, if you build your makeshift walls like your tier 2 walls, you're realistically going to be fine. Plus, you can upgrade your makeshift walls into tier 2 walls once you have the appropriate research. However, I would advise against doing that and just completely starting fresh with walls, because sometimes there's a weird issue where if you upgrade the tier 1 walls into the tier 2 walls, gaps can form in the wall itself where bandits can actually go through, and if there's any weakness or any holes inside the base, the bandits will use that to their absolute fullest potential. Now, when starting off making your walls, I would keep it nice and simple and start off right with your gate. And generally, you're going to want your gate fairly centrally located and fairly close to the core of your base, because when you have a little bit of extra gate room here, we're going to surround it with a little bit of walls here so that we have actual defensive points for our archers to go ahead and set up. So I'll show you what I mean here. So for a most basic setup here when it comes to actually a defensive structure is that you want to go ahead and have a little bit of this U-shape, horseshoe shape inside your base. The reason why for this is that, as you can see on this tier 2 defensive wall, you have these nice little platforms in which you can put not only your men who have crossbows or other sort of advanced ranged weaponry, you can go ahead and actually put harpoons and mounted crossbows up here to go ahead and automatically fire down at any bandit trying to knock down this gate, which is very nice because any sort of mounted harpoon or mounted crossbow does a lot of damage, has a lot of accuracy, and can quickly, swiftly deal with a lot of incoming raids. Plus, a lot of bandits will have to go ahead and take down your walls initially if you have the gate closed. Plus, you can go ahead and open and close the gate at any point in time, so that can actually allow you to effectively chop the wave in half by letting in a little bit of the bandits, but then closing the gate behind it so that some of them are not going to have to deal with you. Now, I should also mention this because there's a high chance that there's going to be a few of you who know about this, but there is a double gate method that you can use for a defensive base here, where you basically have two gates pointed at each other, and then you have defensive walls going ahead and surrounding it, sort of creating a kill chamber. Because what you can do here is that you can leave this gate open, bandits will swarm into here to try to take down this wall, you close this gate, and then you start setting up harpoons to go ahead and just absolutely pincushion everyone down in 2 seconds. Now, the only downside about this is that there are some AI that do corpse disposal, throwing people out of town, X, Y, and Z thing, and sometimes that can bug with the AI, preventing you from actually doing that effectively, which just adds a whole another layer of micromanaging when you have to do things like corpse disposal, or just throwing bandits out of towns after they get knocked out. And on top of that, it doesn't really add any extra functional layer beyond what's already there. Sure, 2 gates will allow you to go ahead and chop up the wave twice if it's an exceptionally large wave, but once you get fairly well advanced into the point, you're not realistically going to need that level of defensiveness. Plus, you could also just segment your base into multiple areas, so you can just have like this little section over here quarantined off versus this farm and have multiple gates between that, allowing you to do a lot more defensiveness about it. But generally, a raid is not going to be that incredibly large. You're not going to have that many people to go ahead and do that advanced of tactics. So it's not really necessary unless you're dealing with enhanced party sizes where you have 2 or 3x squad multipliers. So we'll just go ahead and keep it simple with a singular game. And we'll go ahead and I'll quickly build it up and then I'll explain it. Another thing to consider when it comes to walls, a lot of the decor items around this area, you can actually build through usually fairly easily because these little decorative items on the ground are usually procedurally spawned and are not usually permanent fixtures. Under that too, if you want to go ahead and discontinue the little segment that you're building right now, you can actually go ahead and right click and that'll go ahead and quickly disassemble that segment. Another thing to also consider too is that you want to have the blue arrows facing outside, what would be considered outside of your base. Just because that's where ramps will be put up for the first part, and that will allow your colonists easy access to these walls. It doesn't functionally change the fact that a lot of these walls are still going to be impervious either way it goes, but say if you also want to put a ramp on these walls, they will only be built on this side opposite of the arrows. They will not go on the other side at all. So if you want to put defensive structures on there, you're going to have to put it the way they say. And generally, you're not going to want to have a base that is overly large in terms of design structure, but go ahead, don't be worried about a lot of these slopes here too. The walls can actually go ahead and build around the slopes fairly easily. Now, sometimes you may come across segments like this that may not necessarily want to work well with you. That's okay. You can always just kind of like make a partial segment here and then kind of do it like so, and that will allow you to go ahead and easily make it. Sure, it won't be perfectly flat, but it's better than having a gap. Or you can go ahead and completely demolish it and try to micromanage it around. It's just going to be one of those quirks because it's Kenshi. You're going to have an awkward looking base to some degree, but it's all right. Next part will be to go ahead and add ramps. Now, there are a few considerations that you could do for ramps. Now, if you want to have absolutely easy access for your colonists to the harpoons, you can definitely keep it as close as possible to where they're going to be. Another thing to also consider, though, is that bandits will also have easy time accessing those areas, too. So if you make it super easy for your colonists to get to, it's super easy for bandits to get to, and they may go ahead and try to bum rush your people on the walls. You can also cheese this out, though, by going ahead and automatically demolishing the ramps to the defensive walls, leaving your colonists unable to get down, but because they're go ahead and up there and by themselves, they can go ahead and harpoon to their absolute content and not be attacked at all. Although that is kind of cheesing. So if you even want a little bit more defensiveness against bandits immediately rushing the walls, you can go ahead and put the ramps somewhere further down the line, and then just go ahead and run back to the wall like so. That's certainly only advised, though, if you have colonists that are permanently on the harpoons. Usually the skeletons are great for that. But just go ahead and put them where it's easiest to go ahead and do so. I like being a bit generous with my ramp placement just in case I ever need to put up additional harpoons or additional crossbowmen in other locations because of a random raid. Definitely very beneficial to have that. Another thing to also consider is that you have to also consider if the ramps themselves are touching the ground. Because sometimes the ramps may be so far off the ground that they may not be functional. Like this one right here, it is a bit debatable as to whether or not it'll work. So if that's the case, transposing the ramp over somewhere else definitely can work, or if it really doesn't work at all, you can just go ahead, disassemble it, and try again. But so far, the layout of this looks pretty well here. I also do like the fact that we also have additional space here for additional houses later on down the line, so that's very nice to expand out our operations later on. Plus, there is advanced building shells later on down the line that can create very tall towers, and these very tall towers, when placed in locations like this, can be used for crossbows or harpoons, because the further height they have, the better they perform overall. So the higher up, the more damage they can do for say. So having these right next to your little kill box right here is definitely very beneficial if you have these very large buildings. Otherwise, the walls themselves work just fine. But when you're done and you like the walls, just go ahead and click confirm, and your engineer will go ahead and build it. Now, I don't have all the building materials here right now, so I can't show the wall in its completed state, but go ahead, imagine, wow, it's completely done! But that should be realistically everything you need to get started for your basic base here that can service you for early to mid game. But I think we'll call it good here, because otherwise this video is going to go on for another 30 minutes. So I want to thank you all again for going ahead, taking your time and watching this nice little daily guide here about Kenshi. If you found anything useful here, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. But beyond that, if you guys have any other topics I should cover in Kenshi, or if you guys would like me to see a little bit more advanced base building when it comes to things of like optimizing base flow for things like production stations, I could do that, but it is a bit later on down the line here. Or if there's like, mods that need to be considered too, I could also potentially do that as well. But I want to thank you all again for joining me this fine evening. Follow me on whatever platform is your favorite one, like YouTube and Twitch. If you love seeing me live stream, or if you just want to join the community and know when I get live. Beyond that, there's Twitter and Discord too. We post a lot of memes down there. You never know. I say that, but like we haven't posted there in like 7 months. But beyond that, I want to thank you all again. Feel free to think about becoming a member. It's only $1. It's kind of nice. But beyond that, I want to thank you all again, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.